along here. So I will take up the following items for approval. Action 1A, item action 1A is the approval of the minutes of the November 14th, 2022 meeting. I move the approval of action item 1A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes,
I
Wendy?
believe it doesn't show that Hector Cordero Guzman was present at that meeting.
Okay.
We just need to add his name.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, so let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That item passes. Now, there being no further action items on the agenda, we will now move to the information items. Information item 2A, you will hear a report from the RF CUNY president, Hector Cordero Guzman, welcome, about the Research Foundation. So, moving on to you.
Thank you, Chairwoman O'Donnell Tormey and Vice Chair Berger and Chairman Thompson, Secretary Horwitz. Good to see you all, Mr. Chancellor and Board Chair. This is similar to a report I gave at the Council on Presidents meeting. So for some in the room, it may feel somewhat repetitious, but here we go. For board members of CUNY, this will be entirely new, because I don't think I've presented this report at this meeting. I'm Hector Cordero Guzman, have the pleasure and privilege of leading the Research Foundation. Can you hear me okay?
Barely.
Is the mic on?
The mic is on.
Okay.
Yeah, does that work better? Yes. Well, great, thank you. The report, and I will try to be very brief, do 10, no more than 15 minutes, covers grant activity, federal, state, city activity, and privately funded activity. Fiscal year 2022, complete fiscal year data. We talk a little bit about the number of private investigators and projects managed by the Research Foundation. A little bit of information about the staff of the central office and the field staff. Follows nicely the diversity discussion in the earlier committee. I'll show data on the gender and race and ethnic composition of the Research Foundation central office staff and the field staff. I'll talk a little bit about the human resource workload and functions at the Research Foundation, some activity in procurement and payables. I'll talk a little about workflow in the legal department and what we've been doing to enhance and improve our technology in the contract intake process. Always important to emphasize that the Research Foundation has a number of functions that it plays for CUNY. Most people think it's just hiring people, managing money, and helping write reports, but it's about a lot more than that. It helps manage projects with professional staff, assists and supports the purchasing of goods and services, supports research compliance as it relates to funder requirements, supports legal assessment and contracts, provides risk assessment and supporting the risk assessment function, identifies funding networks and opportunities for CUNY faculty, provides training to faculty and staff, manages data and information, and we do a series of other duties as assigned by CUNY. An example, we manage, for example, charitable gift annuities. The foundation is organized around 11 functional areas or departments, operations, and under operations we have a grants and contracts department and a procurement and payables department, human resource function, finance function, systems and information services, a legal affairs department, the award pre-proposal support unit, customer service support, internal audit unit, and the team that helps manage the LLC, which owns the building where the Research Foundation is located, between 40th and 41st Street, 7th and 8th Avenue. Activity for the first 7 months of fiscal year 23, as compared to 22, has been robust. We've seen a 24% increase in awards and a 15% increase in expenditures. As you know, the foundation tracks 2 metrics. The awards metrics, you can think of it as pledges. The expenditures matrix or metric, you can think of it as realized pledges. You could get a grant for $100,000 and something may happen midway through the project. And maybe you only could work 50,000 of it and you may have to return the other 50 to the funder. So we have both metrics. On the award, a metric, 24% increase, about a 17% increase in federal, 53% increase in state, 25% increase in city awards, 21% increase in private awards,
What do you believe led to such a dramatic increase?
We've been looking at that, and we can separate it into three broad components. One is the number of grants written. Second could be the average size of the grant. And third, it could be the source of the grants. Preliminarily, it appears that the average size of grants and the sources of grants are sourcing towards federal and city, which tend to be higher average size grants. So our average size grant has increased. It's not so much driven by increasing the number of grants that have been written, but we're always looking to encourage increase in the number of grants. But it seems to be driven primarily by a change in sources and average grant amount. But we're looking into that. This is a preliminary analysis, but we're looking into the details of that and hoping to separate the components of change into those three at least. Just a graph just showing the increase in federal, state, and city and private funding, both in terms of awards and in terms of expenditures. And then here I'm just basically listing, and you have these details in your report, the amount of change between the first 7 months of fiscal year 22 compared to the first 7 months of fiscal year 23, both in terms of dollar amounts and in terms of percentage increases by source. In terms of the sources of funding for the federal awards, the highest come from Department of Health and Human Services, followed by National Science Foundation, Department of Education, and it dropped significantly to Defense, Labor, Commerce, Energy, NASA, and then a few others with more modest amounts. To give you an example, Department of Defense, we had $2.5 million in fiscal year 22, the first 7 months. We did a Defense and Intelligence Forum at the Applied Science Research Center. We invited program officers from the various federal defense departments, and we saw about a $5 million increase in activity in the period following that. So we have seen the success of bringing together our researchers with program officers to expedite and smooth the process of applying to grants. At the New York State level, Office of Children and Family Services, Department of Education, Department of Labor, Office of People with Developmental Disabilities tend to be the highest, and a huge increase in the Office of Children and Family Services of $21 million between fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. Sometimes CUNY does get one very big program or very big grant that can significantly change the numbers as they look by departments. We still get a healthy amount from Education Department, but if you see a slight drop from fiscal year 22, at least through this first 7 months of the year. The question for New York City is not which agency do we get money from, but which agency do we not. RF has projects, many at the Office of Academic Affairs with almost every single department and dependency of New York City. Children's Services, DYCD, HRA, Office of the Mayor, Citywide Administrative Services, Health and Mental Hygiene, Department of Ed, City Council tend to be leaders, all with close to and over $9 million per year in awards. And then we keep track of private sources somewhat differently. We can tell you who the funders are within these categories, but overall, a good increase in private foundations, about $5 million, a good increase of $3 million with nonprofit organizations. So all the numbers are trending up thanks to our great faculty and their continued hustle for grants and programs, our administrators, our research teams, all, I think, returning to levels that exceed those pre-COVID. And if trends continue this year, promises to be the highest amount of research productivity going through the Research Foundation since the Research Foundation has been keeping books on this, which January 24th turned 60 years. Comparing full fiscal year 21 with full fiscal year 22, there's been about a 13% increase, $502 million in the entire fiscal year 21, about $565 million in the full fiscal year 22. If current trends continue, and this is the kind of prognosticator, projector in our numbers, we expect about a 600, if you want to range between 600 and 624 this year if current trends continue. We know that for the first 7 months we get the bulk of our activity. It slows down in the last few months of the year. So don't hold me to the 6 to 624, but that's kind of where we're expecting the numbers to land for fiscal year 23 when it's completed in June. We have made our data available for the entire fiscal year 22 available on our website. This is what the page with the statistics would look like. We've added data to the website, and we added a feature that allows users to download some of the tables in Excel so they can do their own computations. I'm just giving you examples of what that data look like on the website. We've discussed all of these numbers previously. Let me talk a little bit about the number of PIs. There are about 3,900 principal investigators with projects through the Research Foundation. About 1,358 just have a PSC CUNY award only. About 2,500 have awards beyond PSC from external sources. And in terms of active projects, the RF manages 10,430 projects, about 4,147 PSC CUNY projects, and about 6,200 almost 6,300 externally funded projects. We're running 3 cycles of the PSC CUNY competition at the same time. Because of COVID, faculty asked us not to close earlier cycles, but to extend the deadlines because they were having a hard time completing the expenditures on the work. So we've opened new cycles but not closed previous cycles, so the workload for that team has increased significantly. In terms of central office staff, we have about 184 staff members, about 60.9% females, about 39.1% males, and you have the breakdown by race ethnicity with significant representation from Asian Americans, Blacks, Hispanic, Latinos, and whites in proportions that resemble to some extent the population in the city and the city university. In terms of number of employees by functional department, our grants and contracts departments, our workhorse has 51 employees. HR has 36. Finance has 32. Legal has 12. Procurement and payables has 16. Information systems has 19. 7 senior managers report to the president. 4 in operations, 1 person internal audit, and 4 in administrative services. In terms of field employees, as of February 7th, 23, we had about 6,191, almost 6,200 field employees. You have in your data the gender breakdown and the race and ethnic breakdown of the field employees. Single largest category, Hispanic Latino with 24.9%. About 1,500 of our field employees are of Hispanic origin, and significant representation from Asian, Black, white, and then there's about 10% that don't answer the question, so their period is not classified. In terms of our human resource work at the Research Foundation, tons of activity. In calendar year 22, there were about 5,600 new hires, about 1,600 rehires, about 4,900 background checks conducted, about 70,000 personal action forms processed and submitted. About 152,000 timesheets were processed in 22. About 782 vacancy notices were posted. 65 background check alerts, 227 non-union complaints, and about 4 union complaints. Union complaints went down significantly between 21 and 22. In terms of our procurement and payables department, they processed 47,000 transactions in calendar year 21 for about 122 million in purchases. About 98% of them done within 30 days. And the same team had a huge increase in their workload for 22, about 58,000 transactions for $146 million. Almost 95% done within 30 days. And we're looking into those that are taking a little longer so we can explore and try to learn some of the features that make some of those transactions take longer than what we would like. Let me close with a little bit about what we've been doing to change our legal department intake process. When you buy software out there in the market, your process has to adapt to what the software allows, right? We design our software because we need our software to adapt to our process. We have a process that is what it is for a good reason. This is our workflow for standard contract, and this is our workflow for a independent contractor agreement or for subaward. And we've designed essentially an intake system that helps us manage this process and this workflow as we do it. We have a new module that replaces the old module for MOUs, for ICAs, for subawards, and for standard contracts that will allow us to track the processing of these transactions in real time and will provide data to grants officers, to PIs, to our legal staff department in terms of who has which package for how long, where is the package. And more importantly, we'll put all the information in the system at once, and we will stop through this upload system the back and forth emails with contracts and other kinds of transactions that, as you can imagine, can lead to things being misplaced, being lost, to endless back and forth. Did you get the document? Did you get the new version of the document? Did you get the new version of the document? So by doing it in a computer system, newer versions are always uploaded, notes can be added, and this can help the process move expeditiously or better. We're going to keep track of reasons for contracts going back and forth between the field and the foundation so that we can prepare reports to the field and help the field submit contracts to us in ways that would expedite the process. We've developed some training videos. We've done some training with grants officers. And always we take questions from the field on that process. So just to conclude, the RF has 184 employees. They manage about 3,900 PIs, about 10,430 active projects. They process 720 independent contractor agreements, 901 MOUs, 779 subawards. These are 12 people in the legal department, mind you. 800 money in contracts and amendments, 7,200 new hires processed in HR, 4,900 background checks, 70,000 personal action forms, 152,000 timesheets, 792 vacancy notices. We process 58,800 payment requests, and we manage over 100 audits per year, including 7 right now at this very moment. The RF turned 60 on January 24, 2023. And don't get any ideas because we're not retiring. We stand ready, willing, and able to continue to serve CUNY for the next 60 years and continue to support faculty, students, staff, administrators, and individuals like yourselves who volunteer to help run the institution. So thank you. This is my report, and I'm happy to take any questions, comments, suggestions, words of wisdom, words of encouragement, and anything else you'd like to offer the Research Foundation.
Well, thank you very much. It sounds
My
like you
pleasure.
have a lot on your plate. And I give you a lot of congratulations for doing it all. Do we have any questions from anyone? If not, thank you very much.
My pleasure, always. Happy to serve.
So now we move on to information item 2B. The Office of Research at CUNY Central has prepared a report as well, which has been provided for your reference. If you have any questions about this report, please be sure to reach out to University Provost Wendy Hensel or Associate Vice Chancellor Tamara
This is the second
Schneider.
copy. It's on
This is-
Onboard and
This
the
is on
copy.
Onboard. I think everyone has seen it already. I know Tamara's not here, but I think, does anyone have any questions on this? If not, with no more items on the agenda, I move to adjourn this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.